Hello, 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 D&AD. Thanks for coming. Thanks for staying till the end. We really appreciate you being here. I'm Matt Baxter. I'm the Baxter bit of Baxter and Bailey.
And my name's Don Bailey. I am the Bailey bit.
My first association with D&AD happened here, 1995, when I won what was called a D&AD student pencil. But more exciting than that, even more exciting than the pencil, was that my mum made me a D&AD cake.
That cake looks delicious, mate.
It was delicious. Anyway, enough about D&AD. Who are we? We're a brand and digital agency. We help our clients make a positive impact. There are 13 of us there. We all are. We're based in Brighton by the sea, straight down from here in London. And we do all kinds of work with all kinds of wonderful clients, clients in arts and culture, charity and non-profit, higher education, retail, which made it really difficult to think about what we're going to talk about on this stage today, because we could have talked about any one of these wonderful award-winning projects that we're really proud of. It's a big moment to be on a stage like this with a big screen, and it was important to get it right.
But then, Matt, we thought, whoa there, hang on a minute. This festival is going to be brimming with people showing beautiful work. Let's try and do something a little bit different.
That's exactly what we thought, Don. We thought, whoa there. Just hang on a minute, because we've got this opportunity. There's 2 days' worth of people showing brilliant stuff. We've been here for a lot of it. It's wonderful. We love it. So we thought, well, if everybody else is doing that, how about doing something slightly different? And what we also knew was, because we've been doing what we do for about 30 years, 13 of which at Baxter and Bailey, we know, probably like lots of you know, that behind those brilliant, shiny projects, there are messy stories lurking behind every project. In fact, there are these things, mistakes and mishaps and downright disasters. And we thought, could we maybe put a talk together for D&AD that was about this stuff instead? But then we thought, OK, if we do that, why is that a good thing? Why is that good for us and good for you?
Well, let me stop you there, Matt. I think there's two good reasons why. One is we live in a world where everything we see is beautiful, polished, pristine, and presented to us. And we all know that there's a creative, messy process behind that. The second is that young designers wanting to break into the industry, it's quite reassuring to know that even the most experienced designers also make mistakes. So two good reasons, I think, there, Matt. Now, we thought it was only fair that if we were going to make a talk about mistakes, that we should share some of our own. And heaven knows we have a few. So here's a little story about something that happened to me. It happened about 15 years ago. I was working in Russia at the time. I was catching the overnight train from Moscow to St. Petersburg. And on that train, I was traveling in a double cabin with a complete stranger, an older Russian guy. He didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak a word of Russian. So I broke the ice, as you do, and I said, hello, my name's Don Bailey. I'm a graphic designer from the UK. And he said, Konstantin, Moskva. Quite frosty. So we had a couple of vodkas, settled down for the night. Now, Konstantin snored louder than a Russian mountain bear, and I didn't get a wink of sleep that night, and I had a huge presentation to the board of a telecommunications company that very same morning. When I finally did open up my eyes at about 5 a.m., the first thing I saw is Konstantin swung his legs out of bed and is tucking into his breakfast in nothing but his underpants. I completely freaked out, froze, panicked, grabbed my stuff and headed for the exit of the train. But it wasn't until I was in the taxi heading to the presentation that I realized I have left the beautifully prepared presentation boards for this huge meeting on the train. They were no use to Konstantin. They were certainly no longer any use to me. And it's just a lesson in the perils of not enough sleep and keeping you cool when you wake up next to a near-naked Russian tucking into their breakfast.
And you've never left a presentation on a train again, nor have you ever eaten your breakfast in your underpants on a train.
Quite
correct?
right.
A bit like Dom, when we were having this conversation, making this plan, I thought I could talk about lots of my own mistakes and mishaps, 30 years worth. This one sprang to mind. I'm not going to bore you with the details. All I will say is that in a big client presentation, in the client's boardroom, halfway through the presentation, the client's feedback went like this. He stood up silently, he inverted his thumb like this, and he made this noise. And left the meeting. making it quite awkward to continue.
I cringe every time I hear that story, Matt. But, so we thought maybe there's something in this. And as it happened, the very next week we're having lunch with this chap, Ryan Hughes. And we asked him, we said, we're thinking of doing a talk about mistakes and mishaps. Do you think there's anything in it? He said, I think that's a great idea, not talked about enough. In fact, I've got a really good story for you right now. Do you want to hear it? Said, yes, please, Ryan. So off he went and told us this fantastic anecdote. He's here to tell you his story now. So let's say hello to Ryan Hughes.
Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Dom. Hi, everybody. I'm here to tell you about my very first interview on leaving art college, which was at a small ad and branding company in Camden Passage. And this is before the days of Google Maps, so I've photocopied a page out of the A to Z. I arrive at Camden Town Station and I have my portfolio on a trolley. And this trolley, if you imagine an old person's shopping bag with the bag taken off, so it's the frame with the wheels on, and I've attached my portfolio to this with a couple of bungee cords. So I'm wheeling this thing around Camden, get completely lost, and then it starts to rain. So by the time I actually arrive at the place, I am 45 minutes late and completely soaked through. So anyway, I get shown up to the ballroom, which is a huge expanse of mahogany table with 3 or 4 directors in suits on the other side of it. And I go to I unhook this bungee cord and lift my portfolio up onto the table. I take my arm away, and all up my sleeve is something brown. So I have a sniff, and it's dog shit. And what I've managed to do is wheel this contraption through some wet dog shit, which has spattered up and completely covered one side of my portfolio. Anyway, I excuse myself with profound apologies and go downstairs, and the secretary of course thinks this is hilarious, but anyway, I clean myself up and I go back upstairs to face the music. And one of the directors is down on the surface of the table, cleaning it with a rag, sort of checking that there's no shit all over the table. And one of the other directors has had to open all the windows to let the stench out. Anyway, despite this inauspicious beginning, got the job. I'm not recommending this as an interview technique. It turned out that the job was shit. I lasted 3 months, and then I was out of there.
Thank you, Ryan. Brilliant story, I think you'll agree. It's got all the vital ingredients, an innocent protagonist, high-stakes scenario, and dog poo. So there we were. We thought, well, if we've got stories, and if the first person we talk about our concept has a brilliant story as well, maybe what we have on our hands here is a concept. And like all good designers, with a concept in mind, we did 2 things. We gave it a name, and we gave it a brand identity. So welcome, if you will, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Design Laundry. This is a place where we welcome your stains and your blemishes, your mistakes, your mishaps, and your downright disasters. And we air them and share them and have a look at them and think about what we can learn from it all. So, with a concept and with a name and with an identity, the next thing we needed was some content.
Absolutely, the stories themselves. So what we did is we dusted off our address books, we raided the database, and we put an email shout out and an online shout out to as many people as we could possibly reach. And we had 2 questions for them. And those questions were simply this. The first question: have you ever experienced a professional mishap, mistake, or downright disaster? And the second question, crucially, would you be happy to share it with us?
We wrote our questions in an email. We sent it out to every single person that we know in the creative industries. The results at first were slightly disappointing. However, after a week or 2, gradually, very slowly, one by one, the emails started to come in. A week later, we had tens. And within about 3 weeks, we had hundreds of amazing stories from the great and good of the creative industries. Far too many to share with you today because we've got 10 minutes left. So we're going to share with you 4 examples, 4 stories that we think best represent the kinds of tales that we gathered in the Design Laundry, themes that emerge. So, should we get into it and hear some stories?
Absolutely, 4 of the best. Let's start. Story 1 from Daljit Singh. Daljit started an agency back in the 90s called D&AD, really groundbreaking digital business. He continues to break what new technologies can do, exactly AI. And Daljit is here to tell you a pretty shocking story.
Hello, Daljit.
Hello, Daljit.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Dom. First of all, I've got sunglasses on because I'm on holiday and not appearing to look cool. Just to explain, my 4-year-old son punched me in the face. And I've got a massive black eye behind one of these, so forgive me. Anyway, this is a story which I've been asked to retell, and quite frankly, it brings back pretty awful memories and makes me want to cringe. In 2007, my agency, D&AD, we had our office in London, and we were lucky enough also to have an office in New York. We had a couple of clients there, so I was spending a lot of time going from one place to another, which sounds very extravagant, but also very tiring. Anyway, after a very long trip there, I'd just landed back in London. I was in a taxi going home, and got an email from our colleague in New York who said, "Daljit, Gene Simmons has been in touch." Yeah, Gene Simmons from Kiss. Being a massive Kiss fan, there was a lot of disbelief to begin with, but it had to be real. I mean, you know, why wouldn't it be? And he wanted to meet me. So meet the agency. And rather than get all the way home, my bag was packed, asked the taxi to turn around, and managed to get on the next flight back to New York. Lots of air miles, so I managed to do it very cheaply. So you're on a flight, 7 hours, and I kind of was thinking, this is going to be some kind of joke, but now it's too late. My friend, Simon Waterfall, I'd played an elaborate hoax on him not so long ago, and I thought, he's got me. I'm on the flight, I can't get off, it's not a bus. So there I was, landed in JFK, got out of the airport, got in the cab, straight to the hotel where Gene Simmons had apparently asked to meet me in the taxi. Doubt was really setting in. Arrived at the hotel and I'd been told, asked for Simon Smith rather than Gene Simmons, because obviously being rock royalty, you don't really travel by and stay at hotels by your real name. And at this point I thought, it's Simon. I thought I may as well go up there and let the bastard have his moment up in the lift. So I knocked on the door and I uttered the great words of, "Simon, come out, you massive tosser." Door opened and Gene Simmons answered the bloody door. And to my utter shock and amazement, he ushered me in and he said, "You English guys have got such strange senses of humour, haven't you?" To which I said, "Yeah." We walked in, the meeting probably lasted about 3 to 4 minutes. Let's just say we didn't get that piece of work.
Thank you,
There we
Daljit
go.
Singh. An interesting one in the Design Laundry, because it's kind of a mistake of an emotional mistake. It's a failure of nerve. But we got a few of those. But who's next? Who's number 2?
Pop it on the line, Matt. Next up, Frances Jackson. Frances started her career at Meta Design, working with legend designers like Eric Spiekerman. She went on to form OPX, a brand design studio. Frances has recently left the design industry to become a psychotherapist, and we hope it's not a result of the trauma induced by this particular story. Frances has wrote us a letter. Matt?
She has. She's asked us to read this story on her behalf, which I'm about to do now. This is the story that Frances told us. Here's what she said. "We worked for a number of years for the King's Trust, a famous and nationally significant charity whose figurehead is King Charles, the actual King of England. On one particular project, involved designing a book about the ways in which the King's Trust was supporting the development of art in the built environment. The title of the book was Art in the Public Realm. The book was carefully and beautifully designed, printed, delivered, and distributed in its thousands. Copies of the book were available all over the country. Sometime after this, His Royal Highness King Charles himself visited the King's Trust headquarters to see the work that they were doing. On being handed the book that we'd designed, he returned it immediately because he'd spotted something that nobody else had spotted. The title on the book cover actually read, Art in the Pubic Realm. Theatrical pregnant pause to emphasize the disaster. A right regal typographic disaster.
Typos were one of the biggest things that we received at the Design Laundry. This one happened to be on an epic scale. So there it is, on the line, Rude Royal.
Who's next, Dom?
Next up, Hazel Macmillan. Hazel, ex-pentagram designer, runs her own business, Hazel Brands, and she's here to tell us how she got out of a sticky wicket by using creativity. So, say hello to Hazel. Hello, Hazel.
Hi, Max. Hi, Dom, and a big hello to your lovely audience. So my story is about when I was a student at Glasgow School of Art, and I managed to land myself a placement at Blue Peach Design, and they were a really cool outfit at the time, so I felt really lucky to be there. They were working on an exhibition about 150 years of healthcare provision by the NHS in Glasgow, and this was part of the European City of Culture celebrations. My boss Joe asked if I'd take responsibility for one of the rooms, which was a room for kids, and we were to help kids understand the value of good health. And in this room there were loads of these arcade games, the ones you see at the fun fair type thing. And what I did was I decided I was going to transform these arcade games into orange trees. I covered them in orange tennis balls, and I painted this mural of this sunny sort of positive scene and a nice room for kids to run around and play. The night before the exhibition was about to open, I had sort of done everything I could possibly do. I was absolutely exhausted. I was sort of, practically asleep, standing on my feet. And I decided just to kind of have a quick check around and, make sure there was nothing left to do. And I thought, no, I'm done. I can just tidy up, put the ladder away and turn the lights off. When I grabbed the ladder, I felt this weird sort of sensation in the back of my head. And I looked down and I saw a Stanley knife sticking into the carpet, and I thought, whoa, that was a bit close, that could have been really dangerous. And then I saw an explosion happen in slow motion of a 5-litre tin of orange paint, which was also at the top of the ladder, and which exploded like a paint bomb right in the middle of the grey carpet. My boss, hearing me scream, ran into the room, grabbed a brush and just said, Hazel, we need to make this look deliberate. Get creative. So the two of us just went on this mad frenzy and we started throwing the paint about like we were in Jackson Pollock's art studio. The next day, when all the dignitaries and important people turned up, I was absolutely mortified. But they seemed to think it was okay. In fact, they all sort of just saw it as this fantastic creative space for kids, and they didn't think twice about it.
Thanks, Hazel. I love that story. A metaphorical and a literal stain saved through creative thinking. Last story?
Absolutely brilliant. Last up is Lucy Bartley from the northeast of England, where I'm from. And she runs an agency called Traction. She works a lot with AI in design too. She's also a great activist for equal representation of women in design. And here is Lucy to tell you a little bit of an upsetting story.
Upsetting. Yeah.
Hello, Lucy.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Dom. Great to see you both. And thank you so much for asking me to participate in this project, which I think is absolutely brilliant, by the way. So I'm really, really honoured to be here sharing my story. My story is about how I lost a pitch because I was wearing skull earrings. So I've actually worn them today. Not sure if you can see the pesky little buggers, but they are the very same earrings that lost me a pitch. We were pitching for a big job that I really wanted to win. There was a panel chaired by a woman, but it was predominantly men on the panel. And we didn't get it, which I was very gutted about, but I became friends with the woman who was chairing it. And at a later date, she told me that the reason that we didn't win the pitch wasn't because of the quality of our presentation or our work. It was that the guy sitting next to me didn't like my skull earrings, and because I was wearing black, which I am famous for, he thought I was a little bit gothy and a little bit macabre. So go figure.
Go figure. Thanks, Lucy. A very troubling story, that one, very troubling. And it wasn't even Lucy's mistake. It was the mistake of the potential client who was a bit judgy and sexist and made a decision.
Absolutely right, Matt.
Where does that get
Absolutely
us?
awful. Anyway, 4 T-shirts on the line. There's only one thing to do.
Yeah, go on.
Let's get these in the wash, in the hot wash, on the boil wash. Let's remove the dirt. Let's remove the stains. Let's remove the shame, the embarrassment.
Let me stop you right there, Dan Bailey, because this isn't any old laundry. This is the design laundry. And that means we don't wash away the stains and iron everything out. We air it and share it and think about what it all means to us. What can we reflect on these incidents that happen to everybody?
Fair point. I like a little bit of reflection. Shall we do that?
Let's do it.
Let's go back through and what have we learned? We've got to speed up. We're keeping you from your beer. So, Matt, story 1.
Story 1, Daljit Singh called Gene Simmons an absolute tosser. What did Daljit get out of that story?
I think Daljit let the seeds of doubt enter in his mind on that return trip to New York. It was a false narrative. And as we know, thoughts aren't facts. So just remember that.
In other words, don't stop believing. Next up, we had Francis. Francis's regal typo. What did Francis draw out of that experience?
Well, as we said, typos, super common. Everybody's got one, but this one just happened to be a massive one that was spotted by the King of England. A massive error. But there is hope, my friends, because even those big errors, those absolute disasters, a little bit of time between you and them can make all the difference. They seem insurmountable at the time, but over time, they fade. And one day you might even be able to have a laugh about it.
We'll talk about it on a stage. Even epic errors fade, in other words. Then we had Hazel's story, the massive explosion of paint that she saved with creative thinking, her and her boss. What's the takeout from that one?
Absolutely. Well, I absolutely love this. And the reason is, it's a classic tale of fight or flight, isn't it? It reminds me of the saying, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. It's thinking yourself out of a really sticky wicket with creativity, and that is always going to work. So I think that's what we learned from this story, Matt.
In other words, something that we all know, but need to be reminded now and again, creativity wins.
Creativity always wins.
And then finally, we heard from Lucy Batley, judgy potential client, made a decision about her based on her earrings. What did Lucy get out of that situation?
Absolutely. Well, the thing about this, it is an upsetting story. The world's full of prejudice, full of judgment. So I think there's only one thing that we can take away from this is the haters are going to hate, but don't go changing. Always be yourself.
In other words, stay true.
Absolutely. And what's the one thing that is the unifying thread through all of this, Matt?
Well, I think it's this. Be kind to yourself. That's the thread that threads through all of these stories. These moments feel insurmountable at the time, but they fade, they build us into who we are. So be kind to yourself. I think that brings us to our conclusion, Dom.
Pretty much it.
All that remains to say is visit the site, thedesignlaundry.com. We need your stories, because if you air and share your mistakes, mishaps and downright disasters, it will help you feel better and you'll be helping somebody else as well.
Absolutely. So please do get in touch. We want to hear, we want to build and grow this thing. But Matt, I think you're forgetting one story.
No, that's the end.
The story from Katie Greenyer.
Katie, oh yeah.
From
Katie.
Pentland Brands.
Oh yeah, Pentland Brands.
So Pentland Brands, they look after some of the largest sports brands in the world.
Yeah.
Now she was doing a talk a little bit like this in front of a room full of people at the New York Fashion Week. It was about 500 fashion executives, and she took to the lectern.
Like this lectern?
Just a little bit like that one over there. And on that lectern, there was a red button. And underneath that red button, it said, do not press this button.
Like this red button?
Just like that one. But Matt, whatever you do not do what Katie did and press that button.
Dom, I can't resist making the mistake.
Thanks very much.